At my daughter's graduation party, the words she said hit me like a ton of bricks. My stepdad bought me a car. My real dad never did anything. The crowd went silent, and all I could do was stand there, frozen. I didn't know how to react. My daughter, Emma, the little girl I had raised, who I had always supported, had just publicly declared that I, her father, had done nothing for her. It felt like a punch to the gut, a betrayal in front of 50 people. I had spent years providing for Emma child support, her school expenses, her phone bill, even her car insurance. I had paid for her dance lessons, a photography class she wanted, and even her senior trip to New York. Every time she needed something, I made sure she had it. No questions asked. Yet here she was, in front of everyone, claiming I had never done anything for her. The room was quiet, awkward. The people around us shifted in their seats, clearly uncomfortable. I wanted to say something, to defend myself, but I didn't. I just smiled, walked up to Emma, and gave her a hug. "Congratulations, sweetheart," I said. I could feel my heart breaking, but I kept it together. I walked away without causing a scene, without making a fuss. I was proud of her achievements, but my pride was overshadowed by the sting of her words. What I didn't know at that moment was that this would set in motion a series of actions I would never have anticipated. I knew something had to change. There were consequences for the choices she had made, and I was going to make sure she learned the hard way. This wasn't just about me. It was about Emma learning what happens when you take things and people for granted. And soon, she would find out just how serious I was about that. Over the years, I had always done everything I could to support Emma. Since the day she was born, I made sure she had everything she needed, from the small daily things to the big investments in her future. Every month, I made sure child support was paid without fail. I paid for her health insurance, her phone bill, and even covered half of her dance lessons. When she asked for things like a new laptop for school or a photography class, I never hesitated. I even sent her on her senior trip to New York, something I knew would be unforgettable for her. I didn't just do these things because I was her father, but because I loved her and wanted her to succeed. Beyond the everyday expenses, I had invested in her future with a $529 college savings plan. For 18 years, I contributed to that fund, steadily building up a balance of over $90,000. Sarah knew about it, and Emma did too. I made sure Emma knew that this money was meant for her education, and I always referred to it as her college fund. I was proud of what I was doing, and I wanted her to have the best opportunities possible when she went to college. Then there was Derek. He came into Emma's life when I had already been out of the picture for several years. Sarah and I had agreed on shared custody when we divorced, and I had kept my distance but remained active in Emma's life. Derek, on the other hand, had tried to create this image of the perfect father. He liked to boast about his business ventures and how successful he was. But the truth was, Derek had a lot of financial trouble. He lived beyond his means, renting a house in an expensive neighborhood and driving a leased BMW. He was a man who liked to pretend he had it all together, but the reality was that he was struggling to keep up appearances. When Derek decided to buy Emma a car for her graduation, he made it sound like a huge gesture. He proudly announced it to the whole party, flaunting the keys as if he had just done something extraordinary. But I knew better. What Derek had actually done was co-sign for a loan, where Emma was the primary borrower. She had no job, no income, and no way to pay for the car. Derek had planned to make the payments temporarily until Emma could get a job, but he had no real plan for how that would work. In the end, it was my name, my financial stability, that was used to secure the loan. And when the bank found out I wouldn't be backing Emma financially anymore, they called the loan in. Hearing Emma's words at the party, it was clear that Derek had been working on convincing her that he was the one who truly cared for her, that I, her father, had somehow failed her. I couldn't let that slide. I had spent 18 years supporting her, making sure she had everything she needed, and I was going to make sure she understood that her choices had consequences. I had to make a decision, and it wasn't an easy one. I couldn't just let it go. I knew that Emma needed to learn a lesson about the value of what I had provided for her, and about the reality of the choices she had made. I couldn't continue to be the safety net for someone who had just publicly humiliated me, who had chosen to embrace someone else as their real father. It was time to take action, and make sure Emma understood the full impact of her words and actions. The money in the college fund wasn't just a gesture, it was years of hard work, sacrifice, and love. It wasn't going to be taken lightly. I had made my decision. Now, I was going to make sure Emma understood what it really meant to take responsibility for her choices. The moment I heard Emma's words at the party, I knew what I had to do. I sat down at my computer that night and began to make the necessary calls. The first thing I did was transfer the entire college fund into my personal account. It wasn't just the $91,000 I had saved for her future, it was years of sacrifice and careful planning. I had been thinking about this money for her education since she was born, and now I was taking it back. The account was in my name, and legally, I had every right to control it. I wasn't going to let someone who thought I had done nothing for her benefit from it any longer. Next, I called the insurance company and had Emma removed from my auto policy. She wouldn't be covered under my plan anymore. That meant Derek would have to step up and cover her car insurance, just like he promised to take care of everything else. I also called the phone company and arranged to have Emma's line removed from my account at the end of the month. No more paying for her phone. Derek could handle that, too, if he was going to take on the role of her father. It wasn't just about the money. It was about principle. I had spent 18 years supporting her, and I wasn't going to keep doing so when she had just told me in front of a crowd that I had never done anything for her. This wasn't about punishing her, it was about teaching her a lesson. She needed to understand the consequences of rejecting me, of thinking that someone else could just step in and take my place. As the days passed, I couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction. I wasn't angry anymore, I was at peace with my decision. I had done everything for Emma over the years. I had provided, I had been there for her, and yet she had publicly rejected me. I felt relief knowing that I had finally stood up for myself, that I had stopped enabling her to take my support for granted. It felt like a weight had been lifted. I didn't need to keep sacrificing for someone who didn't appreciate it. And then came the consequences. A couple of weeks later, I got a call from Sarah. Emma's car had been repossessed. Derek had co-signed for the loan, but he couldn't cover the payments. The bank had come for the car when they realized that Derek's finances couldn't support the loan. Emma was devastated. She had no car, and now the reality of her situation was starting to set in. I didn't feel sorry for her. I had been clear in my actions and my words. Emma had made her choices, and now she was facing the consequences. Derek couldn't afford to bail her out, and Sarah's pleading couldn't change that. The situation was exactly what I had expected. Derek had tried to create this illusion of being the perfect father, but when the going got tough, he was nowhere to be found. Emma learned the hard way that sometimes, things don't work out the way we want them to. When you make a choice, there are always consequences, and now Emma had to deal with them. It was a harsh lesson, but one I knew she needed to learn. A few days after Emma's car was repossessed, she showed up at my door. Her eyes were red, and she looked like she hadn't slept in days. She stood there for a moment before speaking, her voice trembling. "Dad, can we talk?" she asked. I nodded and stepped aside, letting her in. We sat down in the living room, and I could see the weight of what had happened pressing down on her. "I'm sorry," she said quietly, looking at the floor. "I shouldn't have said those things at the party. I didn't mean it like that. I was just excited about the car, and I didn't think about how it would hurt you." I could feel the sincerity in her voice, but the words she had said at the party still echoed in my mind. "Emma," I began, my tone steady but firm, "what you said that day wasn't just hurtful, it was wrong. You stood in front of everyone and told them that I had never done anything for you. That I wasn't a real father to you. You made a choice, and now you have to deal with the consequences of that choice." She looked up at me, her eyes filled with regret. "I know," she whispered. "I was just caught up in the moment, and I didn't think about how it would affect you. I was wrong, Dad. I'm sorry." It wasn't enough for me to just hear her say the words. I had to make sure she understood that apologies don't always fix things, that actions speak louder than words. You hurt me, Emma, I said, my voice softening slightly, but still resolute. And you have to understand that just saying sorry isn't going to change what happened. You made your choice. You chose Derek over me, and now you have to face the consequences. I'm not going to bail you out. I'm not going to continue to support someone who thinks I don't care about them. She broke down in tears then, her face crumpling with the weight of her realization. I never meant to make you feel that way, she sobbed. I just wanted to be noticed, to feel like I mattered. I didn't see what you had been doing for me all along. I didn't say anything for a moment. I just let her cry, letting the silence speak for itself. Finally, when she had composed herself a bit, I spoke again. This is a hard lesson, Emma. But it's one you needed to learn. I've always been there for you. But now, it's time for you to learn responsibility. You wanted to make Derek your father, so now you have to live with the choices that come with that. After she left, I didn't hear from her for a while. But then Sarah started calling, repeatedly. I ignored the first few calls, but after the fourth attempt, I picked up. What's going on, Sarah? I asked. Emma's really struggling, and you need to reconsider what you've done, she pleaded. She's only 18, and she doesn't know how to handle this. She needs your support, especially now with everything falling apart. She's 18, Sarah, I replied, my voice hardening. She's old enough to make her own choices, and she made a choice to publicly reject me. She's dealing with the consequences of that choice. I'm not going to fix it for her. I'm not going to step in just because she realizes now that she made a mistake. You're being unreasonable, Sarah snapped, frustration rising in her tone. She's your daughter, and you're turning your back on her at the worst time. No, I said, my voice steady and resolute. I'm teaching her a lesson. You and Derek can't fix everything for her. She has to learn to take responsibility for what she says and does. I'm done being her fallback when things get tough. She needs to figure this out on her own. Later that evening, Derek called. What have you done? He demanded. She needs that money for college, and now you're making things harder for her. I didn't make things harder for her, Derek, I replied coolly. She made things harder for herself. You wanted to be the hero. Now you get to handle everything she needs. You said you were investing in her future, well, now it's your turn to prove it. You don't have to be this harsh, Derek tried to argue. She's just a kid, and she made a mistake. I let out a sigh. We all make mistakes, Derek. But it's time for Emma to learn that actions have consequences. And I'm not going to soften that lesson for her. Derek didn't say much more. The reality was, he couldn't provide what Emma needed. The car was gone, and now he was out of his depth, just as I had predicted. As the days passed, Emma started working double shifts at a local restaurant to save money for college. She applied for student loans and even looked into work-study programs to cover the costs of living. Derek didn't step up, and Sarah's calls became less frequent. Emma had learned her lesson the hard way. And while I could feel for her, I knew I had done the right thing. She had to face the consequences of her choices and understand that real support comes with responsibility, not just empty gestures. In the end, Emma learned a hard lesson. The consequences of her actions weren't something I could shield her from, nor would I try. She made a choice, and now she had to live with it. There was no room for leniency when it came to her rejecting me publicly and embracing someone else as her father. I had been there for her all her life, and I wasn't going to be a safety net for someone who had just told the world that I wasn't good enough. I've always believed that life is about taking responsibility for your actions. We all make mistakes, sometimes big ones, but it's how we handle those mistakes that defines us. Emma had chosen to embrace Derek as her father, and now she had to face the consequences of that choice. No one is exempt from responsibility. It doesn't matter how old you are, you have to own the decisions you make. Emma chose her path, and now she was walking it, dealing with the fallout from that decision. This situation isn't just about me or Emma, it's a reminder to us all that our actions have consequences. Every choice we make shapes our future, and sometimes, the hardest part is learning to deal with the results. If we don't learn from our mistakes, we'll keep making the same ones, and the consequences will only get worse. I hope Emma will carry this lesson with her for the rest of her life. No matter how painful it was, I believe it will make her stronger, more accountable, and more aware of the impact her decisions have on others. But this isn't just about Emma, it's something we all need to remember. Don't take things for granted. Don't assume that others will always pick up the slack for you. Take responsibility for your choices and think carefully about the path you're walking. If you've enjoyed this story or if it resonated with you in some way, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. What would you have done in this situation? Don't forget to subscribe for more content, and thank you for being here. Take care, and remember, every choice you make matters.